You probably won't be able to afford the luxury watch of your dreams, but that doesn't rule out the possibility of finding a watch with similar style and quality. It's only a matter of looking in the right places. This is where we come in. We've explored the watchmaking industry and picked 5 of the most iconic timepieces of all time that are significantly less expensive. Welcome back to our channel. Make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Rolex Oysterquartz Datejust 17013. Warren Morrison, a Bell Labs engineer, discovered something new around a century ago that would soon become a game changer to the watchmaking industry. The relatively trivial feature he discovered was that a quartz crystal vibrates at a frequency that could be utilized to precisely measure time once charged with a current. This one revelation would ultimately shift the path of history. The small shard of vibrating crystal in Morrison's lab expanded to become a multi-billion-dollar notion, much like the evolution of the computer chip, or perhaps even electricity itself. Rolex, never one to be a step behind, found fit to design a watch using this astonishing new tech, having proclaimed the acceptance of the timepiece in the first place. The Swiss government had already supported the development of the Beta 21 caliber, to which Rolex participated, but the design was riddled with flaws, prompting Rolex to rethink the concept. So, Rolex took a mechanical 3035, removed the escapement, and replaced it with a quartz oscillator that, eventually, beat 4 times faster than the Beta 21. From that, the movement is entirely mechanical, with the oscillator driving a pallet fork that drives the moving train and, consequently, the hands. The Oysterquartz's backlash-free second hand and unique tick are directly attributable to this all-out mechanical approach. However, there's a lot more to the movement than that, with Rolex pioneering thermocompensation by utilizing a thermistor to monitor temperature and alter voltage effectively. There's also a manual regulation option, showing Rolex's dedication to precision. But the most incredible thing about the Oysterquartz, this prototype watch with a jeweled, adorned quartz movement from the 1970s, is that it costs less than half as much as a comparable steel and gold Datejust now. Oris Chronoris Date 733 7737 40 53 LS. It may appear that the rising prices have swept away all fine quality watchmaking, but it's just a matter of perspective. High quality Swiss watchmaking from a company with a long history is no longer exclusively for the wealthy, due to some particular brands such as Oris. Take the Chronoris Date for one. This watch was created by a brand that was formed a year before Rolex and was once one of the world's top 10 largest watchmakers, with more than 800 employees producing over 1.2 million watches per year. Among these watches was the Chronoris, a 1970s racing design that has been updated for the modern era. Given the recent close-to-madness vintage watch pricing, this watch not only represents outstanding value for money as a Swiss watch at £1,450, but an option as well to something that genuinely dates from 50 years ago. It also avoids the dilemma of appearing nice while being oversized. At 39mm in diameter, it absolutely hits the mark, without being too small and large. The internal crown-operated bezel and the Sellita SW200 automatic movement are simple, yet efficient. Even with its name, it is definitely not a chronograph, and the rubber, leather, fabric, or steel straps come in a range of designs to match the gray or black dial selections. What you actually get here is a stylish, well-made watch. Grand Seiko SBG X321J. This brand definitely doesn't need any introduction. This unheard-of subsidiary of the giant that makes not only Seiko watches, but also several other image and electronic devices has mostly gone unnoticed outside of Japan for a long period of time. Its mastery is often missed even now. Grand Seiko's watchmakers worked up their loops after rising to founder Kintaro Hattori's dare to defeat the Swiss at their own match, topping every Swiss movement except the Beta 21 quartz in the 1968 Swiss accuracy trials. The company thereafter devoted its time and energy on its electrical pursuits. Despite the fact that the chapter ended, its storyline was far from over. Grand Seiko was reintroduced in 1998 with the same ambition as a century earlier, to defeat the Swiss. For starters, the brand manufactures every component of its timepieces in-house. Yes, all of it. Even Rolex can't claim that. Consider the dial, particularly the hands and markers, a fairly minor addition to a watch that contributes in the precise telling of time, yet it provides an opportunity for the brand to exemplify handcrafted precision to an almost absurd level. Each brushed line, facet, has been done by hand. From afar, the difference is only seen in the flash that the surfaces produce when they catch the light, but up close, the precise edges and mirror finish are undeniable. Rolex, on the other hand, does not even create its own hands. This could all be yours for far less than £3,000 with Grand Seiko's superb 9F quartz movement, which features a homegrown quartz crystal, aged 90 days, and a twin pulse control monitor. Omega Speedmaster Professional Moonwatch 3570.50.00. The story behind Omega's Moonwatch is no secret. Omega is just being particularly obnoxious over this whole thing, as 2019 marks the 50th anniversary of the moon landings. You know what I'm talking about. Sure, the moon landings are great, and Omega's participation is worth mentioning, but among all the commotion lies another reality that is equally impressive. It's hidden in plain sight and has been somewhat overtaken by Omega's fixation with telling everybody who sits around long enough that its watches have even been worn on the lunar surface. Perhaps some context will help clarify things. Today, regardless of not being chosen by NASA to travel to the moon, if you wanted to buy what many regard as the only chronograph worth having, you'd be headed to Rolex. Despite initial sales issues in the 1960s and an RRP of a thumping £9,550, the Daytona is totally sold out and will likely remain so until humans return to the moon. Maybe an inappropriate analogy. How about the Seamaster Bullhead chronograph from Omega? That would still be £6,620 out of your pocket. Perhaps you can see where this is headed now, because a Speedmaster Professional in full Moonwatch standard with the incredibly manually wound caliber 1861 chronograph movement costs only £3,810 new. You can get it for less than £3,000 if it's barely used. If that isn't worth buying, I'm not sure what is. Blancpain Lehman Flyback Chronograph Grand Date 2885F-1130-53B. We all want to own a watch designed by one of Swiss watchmaking's founding fathers, one packed with impressive complications and superb finishing. But for many of us, that's a ridiculous dream which will probably never come true. Patek Philippe, Vacheron Constantin, and Audemars Piguet are all asking tens of thousands of pounds for watches which we're dying to have. But is it really necessary? What about having a multi-complication watch from the oldest Swiss watchmaker in the business these days? Better still, one with an exhibition back that allows you to see some of the world's best watchmaking, and, to top it off, one that costs less than the Omega Seamaster Bullhead previously mentioned. If this sounds like a big joke, believe me when I say it isn't. Although this watch has a long name, its price is not as high. It costs around £10,000 brand new, which is pretty reasonable. But what about pre-owned? You'll only get half of that. What's the big deal about that? This watch is powered by a Frédéric Piguet caliber, and it's jam-packed with complications. There's a flyback, a column wheel chronograph, and a large date nestled in at 6 o'clock in such a subtle way that it somehow goes unnoticed. All of this requires 382 components, which is around 25% more than the usual perpetual calendar. But it's the movement's brilliance that really stands out here. Even the surfaces that aren't visible are turned, polished, striped, and beveled. This is the type of craftsmanship that hits the mark. Although the future of less expensive watches is pretty grim, it's not the end yet. If you look in the right direction, you could still find great examples of the world's best for less than you might expect. If you are passionate about watches for reasons other than brand and prestige, you'll soon discover that things are picking up. Which among these 5 luxury watches is your top pick? Please let us know in the comments section below. And if you liked this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. Thanks for watching.